Okay. I'm assuming that people have, if you want to, you can get to the haiku deck. This will be eventually, the link will eventually be shared through MoodlePalooza, I'm sure. And this is a short, just a short intro. I called it the LMS because I assume that there might be some people who are on who are not in Moodle, but basically I'm going to be showing the connection between G Suite, formerly Google, and Moodle in this case, but I do think there may be some people who are on who are not using Moodle if you're not at Delhi. I'm not sure everyone is at Delhi. So welcome to our brief time together. And my day job is at Fredonia, at SUNY Fredonia, where most of the time I teach future teachers, and recently have been able to branch out. That's what low enrollment does for us, right? I have been able to work in our evolving first year program and also in our honors program. So I keep my feet in education for about, depends on the semester, but for the next 2 semesters I'm totally away from all of my future teachers, which will be fun and challenging all at the same time, and I think I'll appreciate them perhaps even more when I come back. So today we're going to talk about both affordances and opportunities when we think about our LMS and branching or linking to or embedding just some core Google tools. We are a Google EDU campus, a G Suite campus, but in SUNY that doesn't mean that you get everything, because if you listen to what SUNY Council says, you turn on only certain things. So I'm going to be highlighting the text Google Docs and the slides and forms, because those are actually the core docs that I've used most, embedding them within our LMS, which is Moodle, but of course Fredonia had to do something kind of silly, and that is rename it to OnCourse. So if I say OnCourse, it means I'm talking about Fredonia's personal brand of Moodle. Kelly, I am going to, folks, if you have a question, I would suggest you pop into the chat window or go ahead and turn your mic on and interrupt me. I think we'll be okay with that with this small group.
Yeah, there's not
as long
a
as your back
number.
Okay, as long as that background noise isn't too bad. So I have a question for you to start with. Why or why not G Suite with your LMS? What do you think? Do you have any ideas about your LMS's gaps or strengths that you would want to put into the chat window? Or if you feel like talking, go for it. What do you think? I promise this will not be all about you, but this will give me some insight.
Sounds good.
Anybody have any thoughts about what the LMS is doing for them or not doing for them?
Aaron in the chat says, great for student collaboration and group projects. And
the LMS?
The LMS, yes. I believe that's what she's referring to.
Okay, good. Anyone else?
Loretta says, go to one place to get it done.
Yeah. Right, Loretta. It's not just a launch point, but it's a common zone for private conversations, for everything, including ease of grading, right, for many of our tools.
One of the gaps that we have that we're struggling with certain courses is file size, especially for larger programming courses and computer programming. So we are looking at ways to temporarily increase file sizes for certain courses. So that would be a gap.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we know that's possible, but with it are ripple effects with respect to, speed and all kinds of things, right? We were running our Moodle on your server we were using your Moodle
Mhm.
for, I think, 2 years during our pilot. So we totally understand that. But yeah, selective accommodation for particular programs or majors. Yeah, that's something we can play withable, but right. The problem is
But you
there are
quickly get to the point where you have to buy more server space.
Yep. Yep. I think you guys mentioned these things. One thing that I often get reminded about is depending on how formatted your LMS is in terms of templates, etc. There can or cannot be a common course or program feel depending on template use, etc. And most of us have done all the legwork in our LMSs around accessibility. Moodle is certainly one of those most accessible venues. And then since the campus is running the LMS, presumably there are all kinds of ongoing supports to help instructors bridge that learning curve. So I think those are some of the, for sure, the things. Loretta, it's interesting. I put on the collaboration as potentially a gap or missing area. And depending on how we are using the LMS. And for me, especially when I'm working with students who are either near graduation or are in a professional pathway, the insularity of the LMS becomes an issue for me because students assume, pre-service teachers in particular, that they're going to have the benefit or the comfort of living in an LMS when they leave, and that's not the case in most of our regional districts and may not be the case across the board. So I think that the insularity of the course, I don't have access to the stuff necessarily when I leave, and I'm not necessarily using mainstream tools. Those become issues depending on the program and I think where the student is in his or her learning path. So for me, though, the synchronous and asynchronous collaboration as well as student ownership of materials is important. Now, I know that, are you guys running Mahara for your portfolio?
You're asking me? No, we haven't. We've explored it. Some faculty members have explored it, but no one has taken the jump yet. There may there may be an e-portfolio choice made by our interim dean, our interim provost, but we are not sure yet.
Okay. All right. So I think that sometimes when campuses have an embedded or ancillary portfolio structure, it gets around that number 4 item that I have up on the screen, which is the student choice, initiative, and ownership.
We have a comment from Kathleen Gradel. This is a stupid question. We use Moodle, correct? Kathleen is talking about using Moodle that has integrated Google. To me privately, I guess I should have not read that then.
Yeah, Kelly, that was.
But yeah, there's nothing. But yes, we use Moodle, and it is Google. There is often some sort of there are ways to integrate things, but I don't think we've really explored Google or Google Docs. There are some things, well, not to say that we haven't explored Google Docs at all, but the idea is that there are possible ways of integrating, but we can't adopt everything. So,
right.
I don't know if that
And actually, all right. Catherine, does that answer your question?
How are you using the two Moodle with Google, or are you using them separately?
I'm going to show you right now. How's that? I'm done with all that.
I'm sorry if I'm the only one that's like.
No. I was just trying to hit on the, some key ideas first. I think the two things about Google that are real treasures for me that earn the gold stars are the co-ownership type of idea. Students can co-own things. You know how we always talk, well, not always, sometimes we work on student-centered models. That becomes difficult in a teacher-directed situation that we often have in our LMS, and then the collaboration piece. So what I wanted to do was just show you a couple of examples for the collaboration piece running right out of Moodle. Okay, and then I'm also going to show you a couple where students actually used Moodle as the launch point, but were living kind of in the Google world. So right now I'm flipping to our very restricted template that we use for our Moodle, and it's called OnCourse. So let me just move this over a little bit so you can see it better. All right, and this is not one of my live courses. This is a shell that, or it's a group that we set up so that I can train from it. So it probably, we are running only 1 or 2 themes, so this is what we have. It's pretty locked down. I miss the Delhi Moodle. I just want to say.
Aww.
I miss you guys. So this is this. Well, because I don't have so much choice in a lot of things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
which is, but that's the way it is.
yeah, that's the way
and
it
actually it has helped the transition to Moodle from Angel, which is where we were, immensely, so that there are not so many choices, because the transition has been really big for people. So so this should look at least relatively familiar. I have a couple of things that I always include in my version of the template. So I always have a running video for the week, and I've taken out a lot of my blocks for today, but this is just to give you an idea. So an example of something that I often use, and you will see this is a page right here in Moodle, and I wanted to show you this from the outset. This is a typical kind of set of directions we might ask students to do something. In this case, this was my honors class, and the course was on digital identity, so I wanted at the outset to get an idea of what students were using for their own learning and personal productivity. Instead of asking them to write into a discussion forum, etc., because I wanted them to use this for other purposes later, I created a Google slide deck. In the Google slide deck, I gave them directions to find an empty slide and then fill it in with their tool, and then comment on colleagues' contributions. So I set up a little template in each slide for people to use. So they had to put their name on the top. This is a live. I'm not sharing the link with you because this is actually live with students' names in it. So I asked them to embed a link. It was interesting that several students, and this was a freshman, had learned to use Kahoot in another course, and they all glommed onto it. They all loved it. This is somebody talking about LibriVox. This is somebody talking about Tiny Scanner, etc. And so what they did is they basically curated asynchronously their favorite study tools. That gave me this was like a treasure trove for me to figure out what it was they were actually using for their own study purposes and their own research purposes, etc. That then served as a segue for other things that we did in the course. Now, the look and feel of this is a page. So I'm using the Moodle as the launch point. The directions would be like any set of directions you would normally have. And because I embedded the slide deck just the way you guys probably embed your voice threads right into your doc or into your pages or whatever, into your books, they didn't have to go anywhere. They didn't even have to, if they didn't want to, click on this link that I built in, which would, and I'll show you this, take them, just the way it would take anybody to an external link, take them directly into, now we're directly in Google Drive. So one of the things that I like to say to people is, just the way you guys have gotten at Delhi used to using your VoiceThread application, which is an external tool, the more we can make the jumping, the leap, less a leap of faith and more just a click. Students are used to that, and many of them will say things like, wow, you have things in your Moodle that other people don't have. And I say, well, that's because we did a click and we're in Google Drive. So even if you are not a Google campus, you have the capability of doing this just by embedding either a link or embedding the actual slide deck into the directions. Now, from this point, I had students comment, which is something that can happen within a discussion forum, and you won't see the commenting here. Let me see if we can see the commenting here. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see these comment bubbles over here?
Yeah, on the right side, above the show
Yeah.
all replies.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So when the slide deck is embedded inside of your Moodle, you're not going to see all of the power of it. But one of the things that I love about Google is that it encourages conversations. So one of the next steps students had to do was comment on each other's contributions. I did as well. And then they had to pick a tool that they hadn't used before and learn about it and experiment with it. So this is where literally the instructor becomes the coach on the side and the student becomes the teacher, which we all know can be very, very helpful in the whole learning curve. It also changes the balance of power into, I'm not just the presenter, I'm here to help. So more learning opportunities for students, which is really, really cool. That thing, that I can comment proximally on a learning object is something that is not possible in most of our LMSs. And I can't think of I can think of some ways that I've done it within discussion forums, but not as concretely as this, and with the idea of doing it from a curation that students have built. The workshop tool has been really helpful for me in Moodle doing some peer reviewing, but this is more like peer instructing and conversing. So it's kind of a hybrid of discussion forum / building content / something else. So I love this, and for most students, they are not going to get confused by either clicking on a link and doing something if I have the directions and supports, or interacting directly from the actual page. So Catherine, that's one example. Does that click?
Yes, that does click. Thank you.
Okay. So I have several examples like that. I call that kind of ready-made collaboration. Here's another example with graduate students. And again, I'm showing you this from within what I would give. I always call it a big idea instead of a goal, but what their goal is, what the directions are, and again, I have embedded it directly into the page. I don't always do that. Plenty of times I do. Of course, if they click on it, they can go directly to the learning object in Google Drive. So this is a very similar format, but a different agenda. So these were graduate students who the underlying theme was you can't just read textbooks anymore, and you can't just rely on taking courses. You need to rely on your PLNs, your professional learning networks. So what we were doing was building our professional learning networks and then taking pearls or treasures from them and then sharing them with each other. So they had to report on where they got their information, and this is in concert with several other things that were going on, but this is just kind of like, look at this wonderful thing I found. I love this, I love this, I love this. And again, these are not unprompted conversations. They are assigned the responsibility for going in and making comments to each other, either to do high fives or to comment more deeply about the content that's on the page. You can see that I'm sprinkled in there, but this is not a tit for tat. This is not student does this, teacher responds, student does this. So it's there's some embedded responsibility for building the collective knowledge base, which is what I love. Students often talk about how they then have access to this because all they have to do is do file, make a copy, or file, download it, and it is theirs. It's theirs after the course, during the course, outside of the course. And that's a different feel than when, for example, I post a presentation that is a micro lecture in Moodle. This is there building the content, and it's immediately exportable and editable if you set up the sharing settings that way. So I think obviously slides are one of the easy segues because PowerPoint has been in these young people's lives forever, and they kind of like it. Sometimes I ask them to do things they kind of don't like, but I don't ask them until after they're done with it how much they didn't like it. Here's an example of using a text-based Google Doc for a book that is a very, I call it a flat book. It's in my literacy technology course, and it's a book on the basic tenets of literacy. So what I asked them to do using a template that I built is build out the content and make it their own. I'm skipping over the first parts, so that they're basically creating a study guide for each other on each of the chapters. They do it in teams. I ask them to pick the parts of the chapter that they are going to be responsible for. They have to identify key ideas, and I'm skimming down to the next section. I'm not trying to make you nauseous. They did a lot of work. Vocabulary. And you can see that they are using the template the way I designed it. We want external links to support their ideas. And da-da-da-da-da. And on and on and on. So value-added resources, including lesson plans, learning games, those kinds of things. Another beauty of this for me, because I am constantly working on students, both independent accountabilities and collective accountabilities, is I made a copy of the original so that you wouldn't see the actual contributions, but under the revision history in a doc, you can see who contributed, what they did, when they did it, and everything about their contributions. That piece, when I'm doing collaborative work, is something that is just so valuable for me, because I also show the students this at the very beginning and say, this is something that you're going to want to use in case you make a goof. You'll be able to revert back to the prior version, but also know that everyone who has editing rights can also see everyone's contributions. And then they say, oh, wow, so we'll be able to see that nobody's slacking. And I say, yeah, isn't that great? Because that is the fear and the concern and the experience that a lot of people bring to collaborative work. So I found that some of the built-in natural tools that are in Google, even though my home base is Moodle, gives me more oomph to do some of the things that I want to do. So I'm not saying that everything is student-built, but I embed in every online instructional module, every blended class, every face-to-face class, responsibilities for students to collectively and sometimes independently add content for us. I wanted to show you one more example of embedding, and this you'll recognize as a Google book. Table of contents. This is building back. I have them do a little survey. This is about grit and resilience and mindset. So those are the chapters. The very end, after they've done some learning, I ask them to do two things. One is, well, the second step is very familiar. Go to a forum and do something in the forum. In this case, I'm asking them to report on a resource that they explored. And then later they're going to be conversing about it. But I'm also asking them to help build questions for the final exam that comes at the end of the course. So in each of this is an online course, I ask them to generate objective questions that push the critical thinking ladder beyond the lowest level of Bloom's taxonomy and still create an objective question, give an answer, and explain the answer, and then provide a resource so that we know that they're not just pulling it out of their pockets. So I tell them this is for the final exam, and it is, but it also isn't, because this gives them a chance to read, study, think, and collectively identify what they consider to be the big ideas in the stuff that we have just studied. I do sometimes take these for future iterations of the course and use them for formative assessments. And I consider this to be a sandbox because it's not a quiz, but it gives them a chance to begin to think about their understanding about things. I don't do this every module, but I do it in some modules. And this gets done over the course of the module, usually in the last 2 days, depending on students' work through the flow. And it's public. They can, again, download it. They can save it. They can print it if they want to. But for them, it also becomes a takeaway if they choose to use it in that way. I, of course, ask them to use it in a subsequent module to do things with, but it's also something that they can take away even when my Moodle course ends, when we close the Moodle course up. Okay, so those are some ideas around collaboration. It's what's driving it. It's not. It is the tool. It is the tool, but it's also but what do I want to do with the tool? And I'm just going to skim through kind of quickly to, or not. Let's see. Where's my haiku deck? I'll shut that one. I have two versions of it open, so that doesn't help, right? So I think what is essential is this, that we know what you can call them goals, learning objectives, whatever, but we need to identify what we want students to know, understand, and do. Pick the tool, and I'm talking about even how I'm going to use that tool, like the slide deck or the doc, and then ground it within the LMS with a seamless segue, so it can be by embedding or by putting a link in or whatever, and then use it and then tweak it. Experiment, evaluate, and build it. Keep on rebuilding. So I think that iteration is something that I try to do all the time, especially if I'm taking the risk, and it is a risk, of moving students out of the potential comfort zone of the LMS, because it has such, such wonderful predictability, etc. for them. So what I wanted to do is show you a couple of other things kind of quickly. One of the, again, using the idea of just a doc, is when I ask students to work with each other, just two people, and build something for other people to use. So at Psych, we do a fair amount on positive behavioral supports, classroom management, and I ask students to pair up, in this case, KS and AS, and then using a template that I have built in Google Docs and shared with them, the second column isn't filled in when they get it. So what they have to do is, and we've all done things like this, so this is like a modified paper, but it's not a paper. It's a summarization of resources that they have used to gather information about this intervention strategy. So I ask them to complete it using both resources that I've given them and resources that they identify. And they are doing this in this case, a fully online course where they're doing it asynchronously. But I have given each person a job description. So KS is job description A, and and AS is B. Does that make sense? So here's the job. The job goes with the questions. So this means that these students can come in asynchronously, complete the work, and presumably, A, if they've done their job, and B, if the template is sufficiently rigorous and works, they end up with something that's a whole. It should epitomize the idea of independent accountability and interdependent accountability. At the end, before they share it out, and the sharing out is very, very easy, before they share it out, they have to go in and comment on, not edit, comment, insert a comment on each other's work. So all they would do is do something like this and type in, are you sure you did the full job here? And I actually coach them in each one of my classes on giving different types of feedback by asking questions, by sandwiching feedback, by using the Pixar strategy. So I ask them to translate that into their commenting so that they are not going in and doing something as dastardly as actually editing somebody else's work by typing and changing it. So that's a piece that they do. And then the whole class, they have a responsibility for taking the link to this document, pasting it into another Google Doc, so I don't have to do it. And then that becomes our library of fact sheets that students can then use to do a case study that they do as an independent accountability. So again, the big idea for me is technically all it is some reasonable directions. I don't have the directions here, but a URL link from Moodle out to something that has some structure and some expectations that give students a chance to demonstrate their understanding, and in many cases to also give each other feedback. So I think that I haven't found that this type of thing is easy to do in some of these concrete ways within the LMS, within Moodle, or in Blackboard or Angel, that just by being thoughtful about what I want students to be able to do at the end of it, it takes me out of just the, let's talk about it, let's solve this problem, etc., in a forum, which is the kind of the easiest way to do it in many cases. It has some built-in problems, and that is, how exportable is it? Is it in a product format that students can use again, et cetera, et cetera. Notice I really think students are going to use everything from every course again. I'm kidding. You know what I'm saying. But another really cool thing is we can ask students to create content and share with each other. So this is an example, and I'll end with this one. There's plenty of others, but I do want to leave some time for questions, etc. In my honors course, it was again on their personal, professional digital identities, and they came in expecting, me to put up PowerPoint slides. It was a blended class, PowerPoint slides, and I said, I don't do that, and especially with you guys, I don't do this. So I said, help me design the syllabus. That shocked them. So we identified the areas of common interest, and then we parceled out a chunk of stuff that they were going to independently do with their own goals. So I said, how are we going to, keep track of that? So I introduced them to the idea of a learning contract, asked a group to research it and design for the class the learning contract that they were going to use. So they did that asynchronously, researched it, designed it, and then their job was to share it with everybody. So they put this doc up into a folder on Google Drive that they owned, and it shared with everyone in the class, called Our Stuff. And they created this link, which is actually a copy link. And this is another feature of Google that I love. So just by changing the last 4 letters at the end of the URL, it makes, I don't even have to do anything. It automatically makes the link become your own individual copy of something. And this is the skeletal learning contract that the group came up with, that everyone agreed to use to report on their own learning objectives for the course. Now, if I had walked in with this in the syllabus, this group would have gone like this. Sure, not a problem. But the very few learning steps to get to this point were well worth a few clicks and a little bit of time in class and some of their time outside of class. So they then played my silly games. We did a huge service learning project, and they did their individual goals. And in order to report on things, what they did is just share this Google Doc with me by changing the sharing settings. And so they would go like this. This is a little weird because I've set this up. I am me. Here are my menial identity, okay? That's what they would do. They've now submitted their thing. I asked them to do that initially, and then what would happen is I could check in periodically and see what they were doing. At the end, they just embedded links, added narrative, and their quote assignment was done. So do I use the Moodle assignment feature? Yes, I do. Again, I sometimes do that because even if they're doing a Google Doc, I can then, if they embed the link to the Google Doc into the assignment area in Moodle, then it's an easy way for me to use the advantage of having Moodle, one of the advantages, which is the gradebook function. So so there's lots of ways to continue to shrink wrap the things together, as long as we are kind of making it an easy segue for students, as well as getting to the learning goals that we have in mind. So that's the gist of what I do. What kinds of things do you want to know?
Kathleen, I'm curious as to the comment you made about changing the URL so that it forces students to make a copy of it. What is that you do for that? Because I want that.
Okay. Yeah. When I read about this, I went, where have I been? That's so exciting. So I'm going to just copy this URL, and I'm just going to put it out here so you can see it bigger, just right in this thing. All right, so that's the typical URL that you get for your Google Doc. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to, so I'm now going to take the 4 little letters at the end, edit, and I'm changing them, and I'm calling it copy. I'm now going to paste that. Now you saw what I did. This is not magic. So this is the copy of the learning contract that I had. I'm going to copy that URL. I'm going up into my browser, and I'm pasting it in. Let's see what happens. Cross your fingers. Look what it did. It's now it's asking me, do you want to make a copy of the learning contract? So you can do that with a slide deck. You can do it with a text copy. And then what it does is it's basically, of course, the answer is, of course I want to make a copy of this. And then there it is. So it's not the original one, because my original one is over here. Okay. And this is now my personal version. And what I tell students to do, and we all have our naming conventions, right? Is I say the very first thing I want you to always do is get rid of whatever, not get rid of all that. I hate how it jumps sometimes. Okay, so I want to get rid of all these stuff and put my last name up there. Okay, now they're ready to rock and roll. It's theirs. And then all they have to do is, if it is something that is to be shared with somebody, they need to say who it's going to be shared with. So in my case, I say, please share it with me here, and share with me again and my other, whatever, okay? Or if they're sharing it with the team, or if they just want to share it to anyone with the link to view or comment or whatever. So the whole idea of sharing is another teachable moment, but basically distributing stuff becomes oh so easy in Google, which for those of you following G Suite, you know, they came out with Google Classroom about 2 years ago, and that platform is a mini LMS. It has built into it really easy ways to distribute stuff. But this little trick really makes a difference. The other thing, by the way, you can do is, if you want them to be looking at something that's more finished looking, just change the thing at the end from edit or whatever to preview. And then what they'll get is what looks like an uneditable final version of something. So, that makes sense?
That is awesome. Thank you so much. Do you know if it works with a folder? If you share a folder and put copy at the end?
No. Google does not have copying folders yet.
Yeah.
It is like on everybody's wish list, right?
Right. I have the spreadsheet that plugin that you can use that'll duplicate folders, but I'd love to be able to do it that way. That would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, using one of the add-ons is the only way to do it at this point for copying folders. But I think they're probably going to be, it's a high-frequency request, put it that way. So think about that. The link you put into your Moodle, whether it's a Moodle page, a Moodle book, or just a URL, can just be a /COPY. So that whole long thing, and then copy. Then what they click on automatically opens to, just like the learning contract did, so they automatically have their own copy of whatever it is that you've done. Annie's saying I share the folder with students, and you make a group for students and then just change the members of the group each year. Yeah, exactly. There's so many easy workarounds for the folder issue. ultimately the decision is who owns it. So if you want students to own it, they should create it and share with you. If you want to own it, whatever it is, the doc, the slide deck, the folder, you create it and share it with them. So 6 of one, half a dozen of another, but not really. It's what are your learning outcomes that are driving that, right? So for my freshmen, I so want to own it, and I so need them to. You see what I'm saying? They need to learn how to create an organizational structure that will work for them, but it would be so much easier for me to do it and share with them. So, you have to think through this and try it. Try different ways. If you set up the folder in the way described in all the docs, yes, exactly. Annie's saying sharing becomes the 21st century boondoggle in Drive. It's kind of like, what heading do you want on your hard copy paper revisited? So, Google Sites, I see Annie saying, yeah, try the new Google Sites. Have you tried the new Google Sites, Annie? You may want to. It's wonderful. So, I think we're at our time.
All right. Any other questions? If not, then thank you so much, Kathleen. It was great.
And Annie, yay, certified trainer. Woohoo! Thank you very much for being here, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.